What is going on, everybody? On the Perf Podcast, coming at you once again, keeping your Wednesdays interesting. Yeah, we're off to a good start. Adam can't say words. Hopefully, other Adam is doing better. Other Adam, how are you doing, buddy?
Man, you know, I'm on the recovery end of a red eye travel schedule, so I did get 9 hours of sleep last night, which is very rare. But other than that, we're still kind of mid-spin. So. Yeah.
I hit him up last night. I'm like, hey, man, you want to lay down tonight? I got time. And he's just like, no.
I could do it. I've done it before, but I'm like, man, it's not going to be golden hour stuff. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Let's avoid that. We've had enough last minute terrible ones. Maybe one of these days we'll actually get ahead a little bit.
I took a red eye home because low key my better half works from home on Thursday because she's an entrepreneur. So I knew if I took a red eye home that she would be working, I would kind of be out of it, but we would both be home together. But yeah, man, that always seems like a much better idea on the front end than when I actually am going through it. Cause I was like, oh man, this kind of sucks.
No.
But it was worth it in the end. I did get what I wanted, but yeah, I was toast for doing any kind of content, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've actually stopped doing the fly home the night the match ends thing, because that's about, like, honestly the only flying I ever do anymore is flying to and from matches or flying to and from Alaska on climbing trips. Like, that's basically it. And the whole like wrap up your match and then fly out of the airport at midnight thing, I've just stopped doing it. I just get a hotel and I've actually started catching like an afternoon flight the next day, and I'll just hang out and work from the terminal. Like I'll just roll in, grab some coffee, grab a desk and a plug-in, throw the headphones on, and just like spend my whole day working in the airport. And overall, I think it's a way better way to go than just like running yourself straight into the ground, getting home at 5 a.m. and then getting up at 7 a.m. to go to the office. Yeah. Like, that's not fun.
End of match is such a wild card. Yeah, I stopped doing that years ago. Unless I really have like a legit reason, like I'm kind of threading the needle to get to the next thing, which is pretty rare. I don't try to leave at the day of the match because that's wild. This was me doing a training class. So I'm pretty sure when my training class, especially for government people, you know when the training's going to wrap up. And so yeah, I went back and had some unwind time and got cleaned up. That was the big thing, is I want to get cleaned up before I go to the airport. And I actually had a little bit of a nap, but that also puts you into that weird, like, when you wake up from a nap mode, but you don't really wake up from a nap mode, and then you're kind of
sometimes it's worse.
All night. Yes.
I feel like it's like 70-30. Like, sometimes the 45 minute to 1 hour power nap like helps you out, and sometimes it just actually makes it worse, and you're just like, what the?
It's more of a power down nap.
Yeah, exactly. Power down, you never power back up. Yep. Well, as everybody knows, On the Perf Podcast, brought to you by Atlas Gunworks, and I've been playing around with something lately. So as you guys have seen, if you've been watching the YouTube channel, I have gone through several Atlas pistols. I now own my own Apollo, but I haven't messed around with the palm swells yet because I've been wanting to compare everything apples to apples and not be like, oh, I've tried this one with this palm swell combination and this one with this other palm swell combination and this one with none. I wanted to try all of the guns straight up and see how the guns did by themselves before I started adding palm swells. So literally last night before my dry fire session, put the palm swells on the gun to actually like play around with them for the first time. I have very small hands. I'm a 5'4" dude. My hands are proportional to my body. And I actually think my palm swell combo is full size palm swells on both sides.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the regular palm swell, like the full size palm swell on my dominant side, is fantastic. And then I have the step on the left side, and I'm like, I wish it was bigger. Like, I wish there was more surface area to hang on to.
Yes.
And so, so I think I'm actually going to get another full-size palm swell for the left side and run it like that. And because the thing is, your hand makes that shape anyways. And there's, on a regular shaped grip, there's just a lot of air in there. Like you can see on my old STI, you can see like there's a spot of silicone carbide down the middle of the grip on the right side that looks like factory new, and everything else is worn to a nub. And, so you're like, oh, I'm getting absolutely zero value out of this entire portion of the grip. So yeah, so we're playing around with the palm swells. They're super easy to change out. You just punch out the pin, drop the mag well, swap your palm swells to put them back on. But we're gonna do a range session or two here before state, go into the range with everything and seeing what we like. But I think I'm gonna go with large palm swells on both sides.
Yeah, and me being on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, I would not say I have abnormally large hands, but I do have German truck driver hands. Like I wear size large gloves. All right. Like, and I arrived at the same thing. Like when they first came out with that modular grip, I had them actually send me. I have all the grip panel sizes, and now actually I probably have some discontinued grip panels in there, made out of like different materials and stuff. And ultimately, that's what I ended up at as well. Is like full size, max contour. Wrap your hands around there. Now, I did, like I mentioned in the last episode, I did receive a TDY pistol from one of our team members, and he had what I'll say is like the typical setup of full palm swell on the strong hand or a right-handed shooter's strong side, and then they had the kind of the step grip as it was intended. And so I pulled the thing out of the bag and like, well, that's the first thing. Well, actually, that's the second thing I'm going to change because he has a full side or a right-handed only safety on there. But I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to swap out that panel. But then I was like playing around with it a little bit too. I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily hate it this way. And so it's kind of one of those things. I equate it to like, this is small stuff. Like I equate it to moving the driver's seat around in a car that's not yours. Like, if I'm just going to move your car out of a parking space and into a different parking space, I probably won't mess with your seat. But if I'm going to drive from Wisconsin to Texas, I'm probably going to move your seat. I feel it's kind of the same thing. It's like it's not like I can't shoot this pistol if it doesn't have the grip combination on it that I want. But it is kind of cool that you can configure it to your individual tastes. I do. It is a nice touch.
Yeah. I really like it. Well, who else were brought to you by, Mr. Maxwell?
Also brought to us by Briley Manufacturing.
Woo woo.
Cutting edge at the moment of all things action shotgun, I would say. I would say there's maybe like 3 gunsmiths in the country that are at the level of like catering to the action shooting market, and Briley by far is the most active and the most progressive, I would say. I was just talking to Travis today. He has some wild mad scientist idea for a tapered choke tube and a compensator that he's going to try and get made with those guys. So they are on like the bleeding edge of innovation for all things modified shotguns right now. So it's pretty cool time to be alive in action shooting modified shotguns.
Yeah. Like I said a couple episodes ago, I haven't been in tube gun world for a few years because I switched to open, and things have changed drastically in like the 3 years that I've been out of that game. Yep. I got a friend of mine is borrowing my tube gun for the last IBSC qualifier round, and I'm kind of considering selling it. Honestly, the only reason to keep it around is if some craziness happens and my dissident like shits the bed to the point where I can't take it to a match, then at least I have a backup gun. Or I use it in classes occasionally, but if somebody needs tube gun stuff, they have their own tube gun, so I can always just grab that. So I'm kind of like, why am I keeping it around? And I think I'm mostly just keeping it around, honestly, because it like has some sentimental value at this point. Like I've done a lot of stuff with it.
You would
like,
have me at the sentimental. I'm holding on to guns.
That's kind of it, man. Like
for sure.
I'm like, is it worth a couple $1,000s just to have this thing in the safe so I can pull it out and smile at it every once in a while? And I'm like, I kind of think it is. Like,
Robbie asked me if he could cut my M2, my loading port. Like he looked at my loading port, and it is like Jesse Tischhauser era
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It was aggressive back then. Like people would get upset for how much was cut off a gun back then, and now it's like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't let him do it for a couple of reasons. One is I kind of like the idea of a practice gun that doesn't have the full port cut. So I'm training on something that's more difficult to load than the match gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And however, sentimental. I hold on to guns for sentimental value or collect. Yeah, I do actually collect some guns now too. So if it's just a cool gun, I think it's cool. And every once in a while, it's kind of cool to pull out the retro gear and kind of like see how much times have changed. So I don't know. I think it's so cool when guys are able to pull out some of that vintage stuff, like my buddy Eli over at Cabot. He collects like old school Wilson LE comps and stuff. He's like, yeah, back in the days, this was the tits. And I was like, oh man, it is kind of cool for those guns to still be around in the future. So I kind of keep some of the stuff time capsuled. So I can definitely relate with that. And a lot of people don't realize that Briley is actually behind the scenes on the open stuff too. Like those are Briley choke tubes. Yeah. In the KL12s and the KS12s. That's what makes interchangeable chokes work
possible
in open guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's like their system they came up with for the open guns with the, external comp and then the internal choke tubes. Now that's bleeding over from open guns back into tube guns as well. So it's all it's a very cyclic process.
Yeah, Briley and Dissident, at one time they worked very closely together, and I still think they do. They were more open about it a few years ago, but I still believe that Briley and Dissident work very closely together on a lot of things. So so even though like open Vepr shotguns don't come with Briley written all over them, I mean, they definitely have their fingers in that as well.
There's some Briley in there, yeah. All right, Mr. Maxwell, you got some Gary for us, buddy?
All right, Gary of the day. I've seen quite a few examples of this lately, so I just got to bring it up. I can't keep it in. Listen here, folks. I'm not saying you have to know everything about guns. I'm not even saying you have to be a gun expert to be in our sport. But if you are very active in our sport and you're very vocal, especially if you have a medium, you have to realize that guns are consumable, especially the springs in the guns are consumable. I've seen a lot of people lately, they start to have issues with a gun that has an obviously high round count, and they're just absolutely befuddled. Like, I have feeding issues with my. It's so weird. Like all of a sudden, I'm just having all these feed. Like it just won't feed into the chamber. When was the last time you changed your magazine springs? What? I'm just. I got my M&P, like, oh man, my number one M&P. I've been running this thing's been great, running so hard, blah, 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 getting ready for the match this weekend. All of a sudden starts light striking, can't figure it out. I have like all the premium parts, blah, blah, blah. The extended firing pin supposed to help with that. I don't understand why it would be light striking. And I already am commenting, change the springs. And before I could even type that out, he says, yeah, gun's been awesome. Got 35,000 rounds on this gun, and just all of a sudden started light striking. Bro. Guns are consumable. Springs are absolutely consumable.
Super consumable.
If you're going to put high round counts on a gun, you're going to have to replace the springs. Like, even there's some guys locally, he listens to our show. I'm talking about you. He'll like, oh man, I've been having problems with my gun. Oh, how many rounds you got on that gun? Oh, like 50,000. Okay, time for a new magazine spring, buddy. I just hate spending money on this gun. Well, it don't owe you nothing, but you owe it some magazine, some springs.
Yeah. Yeah, springs aren't that much.
So if you're gonna put it's, and really what makes this a Gary is people who are really positioning themselves as subject matter experts. I actually really like Lucas Bodkin, okay? But Lucas and who's his Bobo that he's shooting with now that did really well at Factory Gun?
Yeah. Starts with a B.
Blank. Gosh.
I don't know. Whatever it is.
Anyway, both of them were doing a staccato video. They were like, oh, endurance testing a staccato. And they started having issues with it. It was obvious to anyone who knows anything about pistols. It was obvious they were having an extractor tension issue. Okay, because it wasn't cleanly ejecting brass out of the gun. So, man, I'm gonna remember the name immediately. He was like third at Factory Gun Nationals. It's really bothered. See, folks, this is why
second.
This is why we don't.
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah,
this is why we didn't content last night.
Yeah,
but they're like, oh, we're having issues with gun. We're gonna change ammo. Oh. Lo and behold, it's still having extractor tension issues. Well, we're going to change magazines. Oh, lo and behold, it's still having extractor tension issues. Well, we're going to put a bunch of lube on it. Nope, still having extractor tension issues. Like, you have changed. They're like, and they just come to the result of, well, I don't know, gun not work, not for duty. This, if you had a Glock, this would not have this issue. Guess what? Glocks have extractor tension issues too, just not as often. But it's like, they were trying to diagnose an issue, and they result in thing's just a piece of shit. And it's like, no, you just didn't understand why it wasn't working. And it's it was the fix. If they
pull it out, bend it, put it back in.
If they would have YouTubed for 5 minutes, they could have added to their video, see, here's how easy it was for us to add extractor tension to this pistol and look, we fixed it. But they didn't. They're just like, oh, yep, we're experts. We can't figure it out. Clearly, this is a defective product. Same thing, that one I saw the other day. Like, I don't understand. I shot a bajillion in 7 rounds. So if he's got 35,000 live fire rounds through that gun, imagine how many dry fire reps he has on it. Okay, Your springs are worn out, homie. So don't be a Gary. When your stuff wears out, maybe replace some wear parts. I'm just saying.
Yes, indeed. Also, if you dry fire a ton, it might not be a bad idea just to have 2 dedicated dry fire mags that just live full of dummy rounds. They get beat all to hell. And I actually had to take my dry fire mags last night and just bring them over to the gun bench and just smack the hell out of the feed lips, because the feed lips have opened up so much that every time they hit the ground, they just Pez dispenser all 23 rounds into the air. So I'm like, that's getting a little bit old. Like, we don't need to make this thing feed. What we need to make this thing do is not lose rounds. So about 30 seconds with a hammer, and we were back in business.
Yeah, definitely have dedicated dry fire mags. And like, same before we move off the topic, like a mainspring in a 1911 style pistol is pretty much considered to be a lifetime part unless you dry fire them as much as we do. I legit, the way I learned this privately, I didn't do it publicly, unless you shoot with me locally here. Then about 2 years ago, you watched it. But my number one single stack gun, I was going hard for GM with single stack. I probably have 15,000 live fire rounds on that gun, but I was dry fire. That gun, I did not go anywhere without that gun for a year. All right, dry firing 2 or 3 times a day. That's enough cycles to wear out a mainspring. All right, so by the book is like, oh yeah, you should never have to replace a mainspring. Yeah. By the book, the average American gun owner shoots 3 rounds through their pistol. All right, so we're already in the 1%. anything that provides coiled energy to your firearm is living on borrowed time, and it's a consumable. So when you consume it, it's no big deal. Congratulations, you shot something enough to wear it out. Replace that thing, man. You'll have much better time, and certainly won't look like a moron on whatever platforms you put yourself out on.
Yeah. Okay, so our topic for the day, boys and girls, we're going to do some listener questions. Now, if you send in some questions, your question might be in here because we have a bit of a backlog. We tend to talk about sort of whatever's going on in our world at that time, and when we have a little bit of a lull, which we do right now, then we'll bust out some listener questions. So just because you send in a question we haven't talked about it yet doesn't mean we're not going to. And there's a pretty good chance that your question is in here. So our first question for the day. 223 is not allowed at our club, and we would like to do some multi-gun matches. Do you think that mini rifle, like they do at World PCC matches, would be a good alternative? What do you think about this, Maxwell?
So I actually tried this not too long ago, and for me, it's not even a caliber restriction. It's more of a resource restriction. And I think we've talked about this in other episodes too. Like, rifles are really hard to get a lot of reps on in a training session because they get really stupid hot really fast. So it's very hard for me to copy and paste training like I do with pistol onto rifle, strictly because they get so hot so fast and it takes so long for them to cool down. Like, I would need a pool of 3 or 4 rifles to do the same thing that I do on one pistol in a session. So for a moment, I tried to do that on my 22 trainer. And I have to say that, like, I didn't think I got quite the same training value on a 22 that I did with other things. Like, I don't know that live fire. I felt like I was basically getting dry fire level practice on a mini rifle, versus like an actual like confirmation on a skill, compared to like a pistol, where a pistol like recoils. Same thing. Like, I didn't really feel like I was dry firing with a rifle and then getting confirmation on a live fire rifle with a 22 because I wasn't it's not enough the same for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw some weight at this in 22. Now, like we talked about in that 22 episode, I did get a lot of value out of positional stuff with a 22, like the long range simulation stuff. I definitely see a lot of value in that. But just bare bones, I didn't get a whole lot out of the mini rifle stuff, but at the same time, it wasn't my only training resource. So if it was my only training resource, I might feel differently about it. But for me, it wasn't quite.
I think this guy's talking specifically about matches too, like hosting multi-gun matches,
like hosting multi-gun mini rifle matches.
Yeah, have like a pistol and a 22 rifle.
Oh, completely. Okay, I feel completely different about that. So in my opinion, the future of the frontier of action shooting sports currently is to build out single gun, rifle, shotgun, and some of this other stuff like what was highlighted, minigun or mini rifle. Pistol.
I would shoot a minigun match.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag Dylan sponsor us.
Yes.
Like, I think we have, not saying that pistol can't continue to grow, but pistol competition in the U.S. is very developed. By contrast, there has been almost no development of rifle, shotgun, or things like mini rifle, where even just to bring, if we just brought action shotgun, action rifle up to the level that pistol has been developed, our sport would literally be 2/3 bigger in revenue, in participation, in events. So like when I sit in the meetings and something, they're like, do you think there's like really, is there really something here? I'm like, dude, this is going to save us all. Like, this is a huge untapped market. There's tons of people that have these things that want a place to shoot them like this, and they just don't have a place to vote with their feet. Kind of like I've been saying with the shotgun stuff. Like, people are like, well, nobody wants to shoot IPSC shotgun in the U.S. It's like, well, did they have a chance to vote with their feet? Like, there were no events for them to go to either succeed or fail. And that was somewhat of what I had to sell match directors on was, hey, man, if you put this event on, I think some people are going to show up for it. But there was a pretty good chance that nobody was going to show up. All right. Some of the events were 30 days out, and they were finger on the trigger to cancel because they were like not going to break even on renting the range. That, however, hasn't been the case. We've had over 100 people at every shotgun qualifier this year. And those were all completely new matches that didn't happen last year, added to the schedule. So when I copy and paste it, now I'm not passionate about mini rifle, but if I were to like copy and paste what happened with shotgun into mini rifle, I would think there's a bigger market that would potentially be interested in mini rifle. Looking into 2026, I think there's a bigger market that would be interested in IPSC rifle. We just haven't had a chance for people to experience that or to say, hey, yeah, I try it and like, yeah, this is cool. I would like to do this again. So I think there's a huge potential, especially at ranges. I mean, the range that you're referencing in particular, that's not a unique scenario. There are lots of ranges where they just don't allow full power rifles to be shot, but they will allow 22s. Well, okay, if that's a restriction, that sucks. But at the same time, here's a format you could do to have a match where there wasn't a match before. So I think it's certainly a segment worth developing.
Yep. So I would say, I think there's a couple tricky things here. I think not a lot. Like I have a 22 that is basically a complete clone of my competition rifle. So it is a JP 22 rifle with a razor on it and an offset red dot and all the fixins, right? It runs very well. It's very accurate. That is not the norm. So I don't think a lot of people actually have a mini rifle capable of doing mini rifle match things. Now, I would say if it is we're going to put the rifle, we're going to put the 22 in place of the 223 for a multi-gun match, I think you're kind of better off putting the PCC in place of the 223 for a multi-gun match.
I would agree.
Because I think more people have PCCs that are capable of doing this than have mini rifles. And then I think you can do more with them. You know, you can knock down steel, stuff like that, so you're not just completely limited to paper. The one really tricky thing is they make the same bullet holes. So if you have, pistol paper and rifle paper on the same stand, it's really hard to distinguish what was shot with what, sort of a thing. But that's like kind of the only real downside, that in distance. And most ranges don't have more than 100 yards anyways, and you can certainly shoot a PCC to 100 yards. So I would say if you're trying to do a multi-gun match and you have to drop to 223, I would be more tempted to swap it out for a PCC than I would for a 22. Now, could you do a straight up 22 match? Dude, I would show up for that.
Yeah.
That sounds super fun.
See, that's,
like I've shot some kind of a similar thing. So like NRL 22 is basically a straight up precision rifle match except with 22s, and at our club here, I mean, they sell out every single month. Like there's 120 people showing up to shoot 8 stages with just 22 rifles. I think if you had a similar thing with like AR style 22s and it wasn't so difficult that you had to have a JP, because like my JP rifle shoots like an 1.5-inch group at 100 yards with like a 6 power scope on it. What's your M&P 22 shoot at 100 yards?
Like 4 inches.
Yeah, like 4 inches. So yeah, so like you're not going to have the same level of accuracy requirements, but if you had some little base stage rifle stuff with some 22s, and it was all, and you can set up 22 steel that's super light and just makes a little ting sound like that sounds super fun. I'd be game for that. Sounds awesome.
I think the biggest thing on mini rifle, if I were trying to position that, if I were trying to fill that void, I would try to make a new thing first and build interest in that, like hosting a mini rifle match or hosting a 22 match like Riser is talking about, versus, hey, we're doing the same thing we used to do with 223s, but we're doing it with 22s. That's taking people who are used to and enjoy Coke, a cola, all right? They enjoy regular Coke, and now like, yeah, okay, now all we can have is Diet Coke. So would you like Diet Coke? Well, man, when it feels like Diet Coke, people are just like, yeah, I'd rather not. But if you kind of build interest around mini rifle or rimfire stuff first, and then be like, hey, next month we're gonna try like a rimfire division in a 3-gun match. When you got a kind of like a baseline of people who are already wound up and excited about mini rifle stuff, I think that has a better chance than just saying, hey, we're gonna band-aid our 3-gun program by switching in 22s. Because like I saw that earlier in my IDPA career. One of the times that people were freaking out about ammo and, we're not going to be able to afford to shoot anymore. It's going to be the end of our sport unless we do 22s. The only people that showed up with 22s were cheapskates. All right. So like that has been tried before and not been successful. So you kind of have to build interest around a new thing and then cross-pollinate it, versus like trying to apply a Band-Aid, I would say.
Yep. All right. Next question. Love the podcast. You guys brought up a very good point about properly fitting a rifle. I just realized that there's not a lot of information on fitting a rifle properly. Can you guys please do a podcast? Or Maxwell, can you please do a video? I also have a YouTube channel, guys, on how to properly set up a rifle.
His YouTube gets more views than mine does.
Yeah. Be it a normal Magpul basic stock or a super 3-way adjustable stock. Also, I got a comment on my YouTube channel asking why you don't do videos anymore. And I responded that you're very busy and you'll get back to it.
Yeah, I do have a few ideas in the hopper that I want to do. And I've also been kind of wanting to do them with a backdrop that's not my basement. So trying to be outside somewhere with a chance to do them. It's all excuses. I will start doing more videos again on my YouTube channel, and I need to install a PRS stock on my PCSL rifle so I could do this very topic very soon.
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
But for those who want to do it in podcast form, first of all, I want to say that I think most people who even approach this topic don't really know what the F they're talking about.
Yeah.
Second of all, I don't know that very many people have actually sat down and figured out what correct really is in a way that they could articulate to other people. So I don't know, even because I've tried to go and find this information too, and I don't think I haven't been able to find it. No one's been able to say. Everything I've seen is either copy and pasted from like the era of service rifles where there was a drop at heel, like M1 Garands, M14s. So not applicable to the current platform we're using. Or they come from shotguns. All right. Well, shotguns, they're trying to do a completely different
thing.
But I think that correctly fitting rifles is super important.
It's super important. So I think I'm going to work this one backwards a little bit because I haven't had to explain this to somebody for a couple of years, so I haven't thought through it in a minute. I'm going to start with the end goal. So the end goal is that you can mount a rifle in any shooting position. This is the key part. And your scope, your reticle, everything is perfectly centered. Your eye is in the perfect place behind the scope to see clearly through it with no scope shadow in any position automatically without any adjustment. Now, it is very important to understand that when you are shooting from different positions, your head is going to be in a slightly different place. So it's really common to see somebody set up their scope for prone shooting, and then when they're shooting offhand, they have to like gooseneck their head forward in order to get their head in the same position where they set up the rifle. Or if they set up their rifle offhand, then they go into the prone position and they actually have to push the rifle away from them a little bit or like crunch their head back into their neck in order to get enough relief off of the scope. So this is there's a little bit of compromise happening here. Equipment can help a lot. Mostly nice scopes help a lot. So if you have a scope with a more forgiving eye box, you have a little bit of leeway in terms of where your head can be behind it. Where if you have a very cheap scope with a very, very tight eye box, then your head essentially has to be in the perfect place. So I had a guy in the rifle class that I did here a couple months ago that had a lower end scope, and we could not get that scope to fit him both prone and standing. They're like, no matter what we did, how minutely we adjusted it, the way that everything was set up, he was going to be slightly outside of the eye box in one of those positions, and we basically just had to pick one and deal with it. Another very important thing to understand here is your length of pull. Because we're shooting an action shooting sport where we are mounting and unmounting and getting in all kinds of like weird positions, the length of pull of your rifle is probably going to be slightly shorter than it would be if you were, doing bench rest shooting or PRS or something along those lines. So the standard way that we've been told to get length of pull for a million years is to grip the gun, put your hand around the grip in a firing position, bend your elbow, and make a 90-degree bend back at the elbow. When the buttstock touches your bicep, that is the correct length of pull. And it's actually a very good starting point. I think it's a great spot to start. But
it's not as pass-fail as people think. Like,
yes, for sure.
You can be plus or minus an inch and a half and still get that test to work.
100%. Yeah. And so that's like, I would say that's like a decent starting point. But what you're really trying to do here, and it depends on the stock. Like the guy says, basic mag pull stock or three-way adjustable stock. What you're trying to accomplish is you can just get into any position, mount the gun with your eyes closed, open your eyes up, and you're just looking through the scope perfectly. This also depends on stuff like face pressure. So some people have a lot of downward face pressure on a stock. Some people actually have almost like a chin weld where they're taking a stock that doesn't have an adjustable comb height and they're pushing sideways into it. Some people just straight float their face behind it, but they have a really consistent mount. All of these things are possible. Super high-end shooters use really adjustable stocks that are perfectly conformed to them, and other super high-end shooters don't have a comb piece at all, and their face just floats behind the gun. The way that you actually do this, there's a couple tips to it. Tip number 1, do this on full power. So as you back out your scope towards 1 power, your eye box gets more and more open, scope shadow becomes less of an issue, and you can get away with a lot more. As you close down your power, you close down your field of view, you also close down your eye box, and it gets to be a trickier thing to nail. So if you have a 1 to 6, turn that thing to 6. If you have a 1 to 10, turn it to 10. That is the starting point. Then I would probably start with your stock at about that like standard, bent elbow length and start going from there. Now, whether you adjust your scope or your stock to get your length of pull correct, which is the first thing that you want to start on, depends on where your scope can be mounted and how long you want your stock to be. So where you can actually mount your scope above an AR-15 platform rifle is slightly limited because of where you can mount the scope. So you're probably going to be running like a cantilever style mount where the scope actually sits slightly forward of the mount. Do not, under any circumstances, mount your scope to the Picatinny rail that is attached to your handguard. Do not do this. Don't have your scope partially mounted to the Picatinny rail that's attached to your handguard. Your scope should be mounted to your receiver. Period. Usually, if your scope is mounted to your receiver on a cantilever style mount, you're going to have usually your mount's going to be pretty far towards the front of your receiver. That means that you're going to have about an inch of back and forth in terms of like where you can open up your rings, slide that scope back and forth, maybe move the scope mount a notch or two in the rail on top of your receiver. There's going to be a little zone there where you can have your scope and you can move it around. The rest of that adjustment is going to have to be done with the stock. So if you're 6 feet tall, you're probably going to have to run that scope pretty far towards the back of all of that, and you're probably going to have to run your stock pretty long in order to get your face far enough away from the scope to get relief. If you're my height, you're probably going to have to run the scope towards the front, and you're probably going to have to run the stock pretty short in order to get that same amount. So the first thing that I would do is figure out the length before I introduce comb height at all. What's your first steps?
I'm kind of mirroring a lot of that. Like, end state is the best way to figure it out is the end state, kind of like you're saying. When I teach LPVO to law enforcement and stuff like that, I kind of say that same thing, in that we have to turn the magnification all the way up because that's where eye box is the smallest. If we were to think about that conceptually for a second, because you can go on to an optics manufacturer's website and they'll advertise a length of eye relief. Eye relief is a very specific dimension. I believe it is objective lens size in millimeters divided by the magnification, or the max magnification of that optic. Comes out to a very specific number. But that number, if you were to picture a football field, that number is very specifically the 50-yard line. Eye box is used a lot very synonymously with eye relief. Eye box,
not the same thing.
Yeah, eye box is the entire football field, goal line to goal line, boundary to boundary. All right, so like that's the entire operational window where you can be behind there. And if you zoom in, like Reiser was saying, all the way to where it's the most sensitive, that is the best tool we have for positioning the scope on your carbine so that you are at the 50-yard line to be able to use the entire operational window when it's on one power. So positioning the scope correctly is the first step, and then from there it's kind of we're kind of fine-tuning with a few things. Now I think to get the height right to meet your eye, I think I've kind of come to the realization that the height of the scope mount and your stock position are in a synergistic relationship. So
yep.
To the extent you commit to one, you need the flexibility in the other. If you need to use a specific type of stock, for example, if you have to use a certain carbine stock on a rifle that you're issued, like you can't change it, okay, then you need some flexibility in the mount. Or if you want to use a specific type of mount, you need some adjustability in the stock. Because like Reiser said, for 90% of the shooting, you need to index the gun, and it needs to be there. The optic needs to be in front of your eye without scope shadow. Some people don't like to run tall mounts, but then you're going to need potentially some adjustability in the stock and vice versa. For stock fit, it starts with mounting the optic, and then I'm kind of optimizing from there. And so when you have the scope all the way turned up and you have the position right, so your scope shadow is good. But if you get a little bit of right-left shadow, so if it winks at you a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, that starts to signify that you're a little bit off-center with where you are cheeking the gun or where you're mounting the gun to your body or where you're meeting it with your face. And some of that is where we start to introduce canting the butt pad or positioning the butt pad differently or adding in cheek risers. The other thing you have to remember about fitting the stock is especially AR-15s. AR-15s are very straight and very square, and there is no straight or square in nature, so there is nothing straight or square about your shoulder. So
nope.
We're trying to get that thing to land in a squishy, not square place, but line up very precisely with your eye. So that's where, like, if you really look at stock fit on some of these, you'll see that they're biased a little bit. They've canted the butt pad subtly, so it lands in the pocket of your shoulder, where the pocket of your shoulder is, and not necessarily straight up and down. And that helps with that right to left index and scope shadow in your optic. And the same thing with the cheek piece. Like, I don't think, kind of like Reiser was talking, I don't think there's any magic. People really love to talk about cheek weld. And guys will be like, oh, I don't want to use X, Y, or Z because like I can't get a good cheek weld if I do that. I don't think there's anything important about what part of you gets welded to the gun or if it gets welded at all. What's important is that you index the gun the same way every time. Maybe that's a cheek weld, maybe that's a chin weld, maybe that's a something. But whatever you want that index to be, the stock has to meet you there. And that's why on guns that I compete with a lot, I want adjustable butt pads and I want adjustable comb pieces because I want it to fit a specific way so that I have a very consistent index.
Yeah. So I would say, now that we've gone through all of that, my actual process. So I get a new rifle. I'm going to mount the scope and adjust everything. So I'm just going to run you guys through the process that I use really quick. And I'm trying to get to that end goal of I can be in any position, mount the rifle, open my eyes, and everything is perfectly centered. I don't have to gooseneck in any spot. I don't have to crunch. I don't have to do any of that stuff. So I'm going to mount the scope in the position that I like it. For me, I'm a little bit limited on where that can be because I shoot open with an offset red dot, which means I have to have a 45-degree mount behind my scope mount. So I'm already limited. It's like, what length do you load your 223 to? Well, I load it to 2.250 because if I go longer than that, it doesn't fit in the magazine anymore. So no point chasing lands and all that other stuff because I have to load to that length because that's the length that fits in the mag. So I put my rear 45 mount on, then I put my regular cantilever mount in front of that, and that's just where the scope goes. That's all I do. I could, in theory, run it farther forward. I don't see any need to. When I put my scope in the rings, I drop it down in there. I use a torque wrench. Use a torque wrench, boys and girls, especially when tightening down your scope because you can ooga-dooga that thing and actually squish the tube and make the erector not move in straight lines. So when people have tracking problems, it's quite often because they over-torqued their scope rings. You can do this on almost every scope. If your scope isn't tracking right, go get a torque wrench. So I start with the torque wrench. I tighten everything down. I level my reticle to my scope. I literally just stand back and look through it, get it about level, and tighten it down. I have spent time trying to super mega level things before, and I've never found it to actually be worth it, especially the way that we shoot in 3-gun. In PRS and stuff like that, I put in more effort. But on an AR, I'm literally just like, yep, looks level, and I tighten everything down, and I'm done. I also want the turret to be give or take equal distant between the front and rear scope rings when I'm tightening that thing down. I don't actually know if that matters, but I it touches my TISM in the wrong place if that thing is slid forward or slid back, so I try to avoid that. And then I basically set up my stock at that bent elbow distance, and I set up my cheek riser at more or less 50% of whatever its travel is. Then the way that I like to do it is I'll just clamp my rifle into a tripod, and I start doing this by standing, and I'll just kind of square it behind the rifle, mount that thing with my eyes closed. I'll open up my eyes, and then I'll look where the scope shadow is. If I need to move my head forward to get rid of it, then I will unmount and I will shorten the buttstock some amount, and then I will do it again. If I need to move my head back, I will lengthen the buttstock some amount. If I need to move my head down, I will shorten the cheek riser some amount, and I will keep repeating this process until I can just get behind that rifle, open my eyes, and I have no scope shadow. Then I will go to the prone. Then I will do the same thing. Sometimes I get lucky and I'm done. Sometimes I have to move it a little bit in the prone. So I will move it a little bit in the prone. Once I have it set in the prone, I will go back to the standing, and I will go back and forth until I find some setting that works perfectly for both, and then I'm finished. So that's like my entire process.
I really like the tripod idea. I've never tried that before. I think I'm going to try that.
It just makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to then unmount it, lay it down on a bench, clamp it into something, move stuff around. It's just, a little bit simpler.
And it's one of those things, it's like people are looking for a very objective way to set it, like to figure out what exactly the right answer is. There is no 100% right answer. It's one of those things, it's like you'll know what right feels like, and you'll also kind of know what wrong feels like. So you kind of like, if it feels right, that's okay. But also at the same time, like people kind of struggle around. And like I did when I researched this, I was like, yeah, but I don't know what right is. So kind of like what Reiser's talking about there is probably the most objective way to get at least within the neighborhood. And then it's also somewhat, and he kind of touched on this a little bit, it's also a little bit of a compromise. You probably won't find perfect for isosceles shooting and prone shooting. You probably won't find perfect for both. You'll probably have to arrive somewhere in the middle. And that's where like guns that I have that are set up more for matches like Texas 3-Gun Championship, where there's going to be positional rifle shooting or prone rifle shooting, I probably set that stock position up a little bit different than I do on my PCSL gun, because PCSL is very specifically not going to have that shooting, or not going to have very much of it, but it is very aggressive and dynamic isosceles shooting. So I'm trying to make the gun, I'm hedging the gun more towards that type of positioning when I mount this. So just because you find the one magic setting for something doesn't mean it's going to be your magic setting for everything, especially if you have guns that are a little bit biased in their purpose. You're not going to find the dimensions on a PRS stock, and every time you get a PRS stock, you're just going to be able to set them to that gun. So in action shooting sports, it's probably going to be somewhat of a compromise, and you kind of have to be the judge as to what end of the spectrum you have to bias that setup towards. I can guarantee you that you're not going to get the correct stock fit on any sort of carbine stock.
Yep.
All right. They're great for what they are, but understand, like, the whole purpose of a carbine is to kind of be handy and general purpose and fit into small places. For what we're talking about in action shooting, you could probably get pretty close. There are people who enjoy carbine. There are carbine stock enjoyers who do very well in the sport. But like, if you're looking for how do I fit the gun as well as possible to me, you're probably going to be in more some sort of adjustable fixed, as much of an oxymoron as that sounds. You're probably going to be in somewhat more the rifle type stocks than the carbine stocks. And then if you kind of arrive at something and you find you can replicate it kind of similar in a carbine stock, I would say you just got lucky. Or the
big thing with the carbine stocks, it's not even that they don't have a cheek riser, it's that the adjustment segments are very long.
Yes.
Like they adjust in 1 inch or even greater increments. And that's one of the reasons that I like, like that XLR stock that I run. Like I can loosen up the screws and I can move it 1 bajillimeter or 5 inches, like in anything in between. Mm-hmm. So you have, not only do you have infinite adjustment, but you have very, very granular adjustment to whatever dimension you want, where the carbine stock is like 1 click is quite a ways. Like 1 click could be from like, ooh, that's pretty close, to like, oh, I went completely off the other end of the scale. And that's one of those things that Maxwell was talking about, like, depending on the level of adjustment you have in one thing, you might have to adjust the other thing. So you might have to find the closest click on a carbine stock and then go back to the scope and start sliding the scope in the scope rings in order to get it closer.
Yep. And like I can I shoot Magpul Mows and B5 SOPMOD replica stocks quite a bit, and they're kind of close, but I also shoot them in that environment where that's kind of contemporary and normal, in that tactical world. So it's not like I can't shoot a rifle if it doesn't have my perfect setting. But like I say,
Yep.
if we're going into that highly competitive environment where we're looking for every 10th, I want it to be as close as possible. So guns that are set up for that, I hedge them in that direction.
Yeah. And then one last little piece on this is, if you wear prescription eyewear, wear the prescription eyewear you're going to be shooting with when you're going through this process, because you are stacking lenses on lenses, and this can potentially make a difference.
I think also one thing before we leave, if your weapon hand or fire control hand is compressed so much that it feels like your elbow is all the way in, your stock's not long enough. Like if I hold my hands out like I'm shooting a pistol, if I bring my hand, my fire control hand, about to where my elbow is on my support hand, from which is still in the pistol position, that's about where I want to be. Like at about a 30 to 45 degree angle is what I want my fire control hand to be in, so I have some ability to support the weight and move around. If you're inside of that, you start to be super compressed, and then that half of your body is basically out of play for any sort of target transition stuff. So a lot of tactical shooters, they get really sucked into having that thing really close to their body, and I try to talk the open-minded ones out of that at any possible opportunity.
Yep. All right.
Video coming.
So
I promise.
yeah, I think there's going to be video coming on a lot of these, because our next question starts with, can you do a video explaining how you train a shotgun stage for 3-gun, the different types of shells for a stage, and what I'm not sure how you guys plan it and practice it. So this isn't worded particularly well, and I'm a little bit confused on exactly what he's asking. But
so I just started blasting.
Yes, I just started blasting. So the different types of shells for a shotgun stage. So, or not even necessarily shotgun stage, but shotgun portion of the stage. Shotgun in the context of multi-gun or IPSC shotgun. Basically, you have birdshot, buckshot, slugs. For birdshot, for all of these, you're essentially going to be shooting 2 3/4 inch shells. You're going to find the one that runs the best in your gun, and that's what you're going to shoot. You want one that runs well and patterns well. Usually I practice with the cheapest thing that will run my gun, and I shoot matches with the one that actually patterns the best. For me, it is AA 1250 number 7.5s pattern very well and run very well out of a dissonant shotgun. Now, then you're gonna, and then those usually max out at 6. So number 6 shot is usually the biggest shot you're gonna go with. And you're generally speaking going to run the slowest velocity that your gun will run, because more velocity equals more recoil. And we were playing a game where returning back to target quickly for follow-up shots is a thing. Then your buckshot is going to be all over the place depending on the gun.
Let's unpack birdshot there a little bit.
All right, go for it.
So he mentioned number 6 is either by rules or by convention. Number 6 is probably the largest size you'll ever use. If they're allowing you to use large pellets, they're probably at least going to limit you to number 6. Most people are not shooting number 6s as a general rule. However, there have been matches in the past where you were kind of taking a handicap if you didn't have some with you. So like right now on my shelf, there are 3 boxes of number 6s that they just kind of come with me to those matches. And I'll probably be nursing them for the next 5 to 10 years. It's one of those things where it's like you kind of bring them around and don't use them, and then all of a sudden the day comes that you need them and you're glad you have them.
Well, and what he's talking about is heavy targets.
Yep, heavy targets or spinners.
Yep.
So something that needs more energy than just a hit. Those are very rare. But they do
somewhere
happen.
Between 7 and 8 is where most people land, I would say.
Most people, vast majority of the time are shooting 7.5 or 8s. You'll find people that prefer one or the other. It's really horse apiece. You get a little bit larger pellets with 7.5, so those would carry a little bit more energy by comparison to number 8s. Number 8s are smaller, so you will get more of them. But really, I buy 7.5 when I have the choice. I do not feel undergunned if I have to use number 8s. I agree.
Yeah, so when I'm building my choke card, which I was going to get to here in a minute, I have not found a more than like a 1-inch difference in pattern size or a distance relative to the target that I can knock over different. So I can knock over the same weight of target with 7.5 and 8 at the same velocity, and my patterns are the same size, give or take the margin of error. So like I literally can't tell the difference between them in any meaningful way.
Yep. I would agree with Riser in that we're kind of using the lower velocities that we can get away with. I traditionally have shot 1145s or 1150s because my guns would run them, and I like those. At the same time, I had contemporaries who would swear by 1300s or 1350s, which is kind of on the edge of a heavy trap load, if you will. And then a lot of stuff falls in the middle. A lot of people are shooting 1250 or 1235. Really, I would say diversity of velocities has diminished as Federal came out with Action Gunner. Action Gunner is 1235. Tons of people want to shoot Action Gunner, especially in open. So that has really kind of reined in like the velocity debate because people wanted those shells for other reasons. They just kind of took the velocity at hand. Given the choice, I would probably shoot 1150s in my M2. Mainly what people were looking for back in the day when they really worried about this stuff was the hulls. We wanted hulls made out of a solid plastic for the loading to work well. So the reason that a lot of people love AA's or they love, what's the Remington load? The Premier STS or something like that.
Yeah, the STS.
It's a comparable thick plastic. Or we really like the Federals because it's a thinner plastic, but it's ribbed, so it still has that rigidity. But they're slick, and they hold their shape, and they load well. So they work really well for loading, and not all shells do load very well. There was an era of time where Clever shells, it was Cleaver or Clever. They were kind of an imported shell. They were cheap, but they felt cheap. So like people would practice with Clevers and then they would go to the match and they would shoot AA's or stuff like that because they would come out of their caddies smoother and they would load better. The other thing you're looking for in a birdshot shell is consistency of the hull of the crimps. So a reason a lot of people would pay the money for a AA or an STS or a Federal gold medal is because they had a consistent crimp. We're trying to get the shells to feed super well. And so the reason those shells are more expensive is they're really catered at the sporting clays and the shotgun clay sports market. They aren't loading their guns on the clock, all right? They're trying to get consistency and patterns for flying clays. We were willing to spend the money because those premium shells had more consistency in how they were crimped. So shells that would case gauge with a higher percentage of pass rate was the reason people were willing to pay for them in the past.
Yeah, and also the consistency of crimp and the number of petals on a crimp. So the best way I can think of to describe number of petals is if you have the number of petals in your crimp is that shell is going to try to become the shape of the number of petals. So if you have a 4-petal crimp, which I don't even know if that's a thing, but a 4-petal crimp will try to become square. Okay? A 5-petal crimp will try to become the shape of a pentagon. A 6-petal crimp will try to become the shape of a hexagon. An 8-petal crimp will try to become the shape of an octagon. Octagons are way closer to circles than squares are. So the more petals you have in a crimp, the closer to a circle that shell wants to be, and the closer to a circle that shell will stay when it is being run through a gun. It's hot, it's cold, it's going through all of the things that a shell goes through over the course of a 3-gun match. So if you just look at the end of your shotgun shell and you start counting petals, the more the better, generally speaking.
And then what brought Action Gunner to the market and from Federal was they started using a roll crimp to make a birdshot load, which feeds better or is one of the better feeding shells for box fed shotguns.
Yeah. So they are getting rid of the pedals altogether, and they're like, we are going to put a round disc so it will stay round, and we're going to load it like it's a slug.
Yep. And that's also part of how that product exists, is because they don't need to load slugs and buckshot all year long. So those machines kind of sat fallow for a while. And so Federal also saw it as, oh, here's another thing we can load on our low demand machines. So that makes it advantageous as well for them. And that roll crimp, even if you're not shooting a box fed gun, it's very consistent for tube fed guns too. However, those shells are a little bit longer than some conventionally crimped shells. So in my M2, I can fit 12 action gunners in my IPSC legal length tube, but man, that 12th one barely clicks in there.
It's a little tight.
Whereas if I use a Top Gun shell, so same company, same brand, but it's their cheaper line, conventionally crimped. Their conventionally crimped shell is shorter. 12 fit in there pretty comfortably. Or even I had some guns where it was like only 11 would fit, but I could get 11 action gunners would fit, but I could get 12 Top Guns in there. Consistency of crimp, and then the compromise in how long those shells are when they are crimped is kind of what we're looking for. And there's about 300 people in the entire country that care about that kind of stuff. So we're kind of on our own to figure that out. You're not really going to get it from the ammo manufacturers.
Yeah, definitely not. So the next type of ammo that is used, which is used very infrequently in multi-gun, but is used on every single IPSC shotgun match, is buckshot. If you are shooting 3-gun, and the match doesn't specifically prohibit it, you are going to shoot flight control buck, period. Flight control buck has a wad that is designed to not come apart for as long as possible in order to hold all of the pellets together. Flight control buck patterns very, very densely for a very long ways. I actually mixed up my buckshot and my slugs on a stage at Drink Hard as Hell one time, and I got multiple pellets on a C-zone steel target at 100 yards shooting flight control buck. It stays together very, very well. It is important to understand that if you're shooting flight control buck, it is going to have a choke that it likes, and it will like your other chokes less. And the choke that it likes might not be your tighter choke. In fact, it's almost never your tighter choke, because that wad is designed to not be disturbed. So if you're trying to squeeze it down with a tighter choke, you're actually disturbing all of those pellets in the wad on the way out of the gun. So like, for example, on my Dissident, if I shoot a light mod, that thing patterns like a fist out to 50 paces. If I shoot a full choke, it will completely come apart inside of 20. So you'll figure out which one it is. Usually people shoot double-aught in that stuff.
Yeah.
IPSC is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and so like the whole point of a choke at all in your shotgun is to control how fast a conventional pedal wad opens. The sooner those pedals open, the sooner they increase drag like a parachute and fall away from the shot column. When the wad falls away from the shot column, the shot starts to spread out. Flight control, or its contemporaries, long-range wads, they don't open up. And I'll do a video on this too, because this just came up at our IPSC match in Minnesota, and we punished some people. So
we need some education.
I'll explain it. But essentially, a flight control wad is designed not to fall away as quickly, keeping the pellets together. So the pellets kind of have their own inertia and are in a direction before the wad starts to fly away. If you use a tighter choke with flight control, you're essentially kind of reverse encouraging it to fall away sooner. So it's going to set those pellets free a bit sooner. But the other thing you have to be careful, flight control is a trade name, all right? Like Advil is a trade name for ibuprofen. All right, so the rules don't call out flight control. The rules in IPSC call out long-range wads. Long-range wads are federal flight control, Hornady uses the same wad. It's black instead of white. They call it Versatite. But essentially, there are a few different long-range wads out there. It's not just flight control. So a few people were like, well, I'm not using flight control. You're right. You're not using flight control. You're using one of the other ones. It's like saying you can't use ibuprofen. It's like, well, I'm not using Advil. Like, yeah, you're not using Advil. You're still using ibuprofen. So you have to be careful on that. And really, that's only IPSC flavored matches or anything match directed by Brian Nelson that you have to worry about. The rest of them probably, if they mix in buckshot, they probably don't care if you use flight control.
Yeah. So I won't go super deep into the IPSC stuff because there's only, 20 people in the whole world that care about this. And if you're asking this question about 3-gun, you probably don't care. But the gist is you can't use those long-range control wads, so you have to find something without that. In that case, your shotgun is probably actually going to pattern tighter with tighter chokes. On my non-flight control, non-long-range wad stuff, my shotgun does pattern the best with a full choke. And then shot size changes pretty drastically because of the way that IPSC shotgun is scored. So you're quite often trying to get more pellets. So people will shoot things like number 4 buck, which is not the same as number 4 shot. So it is a whole hour-long podcast worth of deep dive that I don't think we should jump into here because we're already past it out.
Because IPSC, a lot of times they're actually scoring hit factor with buckshot. In 3-gun, it usually means that the match director put some kind of heavy FU target out there, and you have to hit it with some prejudice. So buckshot is very rarely used in 3-gun, and when it is, it's kind of used for some
It's used when you need a sledgehammer.
Yeah, it's used for some sledgehammer type target. So a lot of the nuance that people are figuring out with IPSC buckshot, you really don't have to worry about.
Yep. Yeah, so don't get all bent out of shape on that. And then slugs. Slugs are the third type of shell that you're going to shoot. As a general rule, there's 2 types of slugs. There are rifled slugs and there are sabot slugs. I'm not actually sure how to say that. But the gist is you want your slug to spin. The rifling has to be somewhere. So you either have a rifled slug barrel where the rifling is in the barrel of your shotgun, and then you have a sabot slug where the slug itself is contained inside of a plastic sleeve, and the rifling in the barrel spins the slug just like a normal rifle. Now, none of us shoot those because we primarily shoot other things, and if you shoot birdshot or buckshot out of a rifled slug barrel, you can guarantee that none of those pellets are going to go where you want them to. They are going to fly at an approximately 45-degree cone into the hinterland, and you won't hit anything. So we all run smooth barrels. You still want the rifling to be somewhere because you're trying to spin that thing, so that is where rifled slugs come from. So the rifling is on the slug itself, so when it leaves your barrel and goes out into open air, it gets spun like a football or like a bullet. So if you're shooting slugs, you're shooting rifled slugs. Just like with the rest of them, choke selection, depending on the gun and the slug, can affect your point of impact. So generally people will figure out which choke groups the best with slugs, and they will usually shoot that choke if they have a stage with slugs on it. I've been extremely lucky in my last 2 shotguns that they aren't very picky on choke selection, and I can shoot whatever choke I want. Anything to add for that?
Yeah, sabot slugs are basically for the parts of the country where you have to hunt with them, so they have rifled barrels. And really, which slug you choose comes down to which one you can get your hands on, because they're not
also a thing.
widely available outside the Midwest, I don't think. And they kind of vary greatly on like performance-wise, like cycling in your gun. So like the temptation a lot of times is to use low recoil slugs in our game because for obvious reasons. The standard pressure slugs hit pretty hard because again, they mostly get sold to kill deer. So usually full power slugs is not what you want unless you need them, but some guns won't run the low recoil stuff. So I think we saw, especially open shotguns. I think I watched a few of them this weekend. short stroking because they didn't have enough oomph to cycle the action, or the burn rate on those powders was not fast enough to do well in 18 to 20 inch barrels. Yeah. So it's more one that groups well and cycles in your gun that you can find. I think vast majority of, for a while the JM Fiyoshi slugs were kind of popular. I kind of unofficially heard they're not making those anymore because the Ukrainians and the Russians are shooting at each other. So the ammo manufacturing side is kind of cutting not popular SKUs to prioritize runtime. So I don't think the JM slugs are going to be very easy to find for a while, if ever again. You'll see probably the most popular would be the Federal True Ball.
Yep, that's what I shoot.
You'll also see a lot of Remington sluggers. Remington low recoil sluggers are fairly easy to find in circulation. And then Hornady. Hornady makes a good slug as well. I used the Hornadys for a long time because we have a good relationship with Hornady. The challenge was if I didn't have enough of them and I had to borrow slugs, my zero on Hornady slugs was different than Federal slugs. And all my friends had Federal slugs. So it's almost kind of one of those ELS belt equations. It was like, yeah, there might be a better way to attach stuff to my belt, but all my friends have ELS. So I want ELS so that I can borrow their shit. So I would say the most popular three probably in this order that you would see would be Federal True Ball, Remington Slugger, and Hornady.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, the Federal True Ball and the Federal LE slugs are exactly the same. They have exactly the same point of impact, no change to felt recoil, anything like that out of my shotgun. They are the same weight. They are the same dimensions. I'm pretty sure they're actually the same slug, so they are pretty interchangeable. And as Maxwell said, the light recoil thing, I shoot 1250 birdshot out of my Dissident. I shoot 1350 slugs because slower than that won't run.
Yeah, like full power slugs are like 1600.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and we do have another question here. I don't know how long do you think it's going to take to wrap up this other question? Let's do it. We'll try to be efficient about this one, but yeah. So the question is basically, what do you guys think of the PCSL classifiers / classifier system for PCSL? So Max Lee Grandis launched his classification system. He has some classifier stages, and then there is also a broader classification system. So we will probably have a significantly larger talk about this at some point here. I'm just going to approach this at like, what do we think of the... we're not going to go into exactly how everything works because it is quite detailed and takes a lot of math and hurts my brain.
Max isn't analytical, so you know that shit's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. But it's more like instead of like a USPSA type thing where it's like if you shoot this score on this thing and you shoot enough of them, that makes you this class. It is a very relative to everybody around you style classification. So it uses a system called ELO. ELO is not an acronym for anything. It is the person's name who came up with it. And I believe it was designed for... Yeah, and I believe it was designed for chess originally. I could be wrong about that.
Mistake number 2.
Yeah. So anyways, basically it is your performance relative to the people around you. So the way the classification system in PCSL is going to work in very, very brief, super not granular detail is you don't go try to shoot a certain score on a certain run. You go shoot matches and this system will automatically put you where you deserve to be. I am about that. I absolutely hate the USPSA classification system and all of the ins and outs of it for a lot of reasons. Mostly I shoot very few USPSA matches, and my classification, because of the way that classifiers work, is definitely not concurrent to my skill level in that system, and I get accused of sandbagging quite often.
So you don't like it because it doesn't cater to you and you don't participate in it very much.
I don't like it because I think it's very broken, and I think it's a poor way to determine your skill set in a game that has a lot of movement and all the other stuff, when the vast majority of classifications practice stand and shoot skills, which is a very, very small portion of the actual game.
Got it.
So this thing, even his classifiers, none of them are I don't think any of them, most of them at least, are not stand and shoot classifiers. They are a whole stage that is set up in a very specific way. But it is important to understand that the bulk of the classification here actually comes from your match finish. So a classifier, can be used to kind of like kickstart this whole thing, but it is your finish in a match relative to the level of competition around you that places you where you deserve to be. So if you go to a national level match, your relative competition is going to be Kyle Litzy and Brian Nelson and dudes like that. Which means the weight that carries will be more than if you were shooting with Bob and Steve and George out in some place in Iowa. All that makes sense? Kind of, sort of?
Yep.
Yeah, I had several back and forths with Max over text. He is a significantly smarter person than I am. He was trying to describe it to me. I was hanging on for dear life. At some point, we will clarify all of this, but the gist of the classification system is you just show up and shoot, and the math puts you in the classification that is appropriate for your level of ability. I love this for so many reasons. Well, let me back up and say that I don't like classifications. If nothing had classifications, I'd be happier.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I know. I am in the very, very minority of this. I like being able to say, like, people who are like, I've seen a lot of, this is why I don't like classifications. I like classifications like, you got better. You went out of B and now you're in A, or you went out of C and now you're in B. Like, it gives people like a belt system style, like, I'm getting better, and
yes.
I can see that I'm getting better because this piece of paper tells me. What I don't like is, Mr. Maxwell, how do I feel about hiding?
You're not a fan.
Not a fan of hiding. Classifications, depending on how you word your Instagram post, can make things really hidey. I've seen posts like, I won this match, that don't clarify, I won A class in this match. That is a very disingenuous way to promote yourself, and it rubs me the wrong way.
And that's fair.
I really don't like that.
That's fair.
So that's what I don't like. I also don't like that there's just kind of like an arbitrary cutoff. Like, if you won A class, well, some dude who beat you got last place in M class, but you quote unquote won. Like, I don't know. It doesn't tickle my the reasons that I shoot the sport in the right places. Now, I'm very, very clearly in the minority here, probably like 99-1 against. So most people don't think the way that I think about that. But if you are going to classify people, I think classifying people based off of how they finish in a match relative to other high-level competition is the way to do it, not how you can do some 3-second stand and shoot stage.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So first of all,
this is supposed to be short, and I failed catastrophically.
Yep. And so, like, understand that Riser and I are in the top tier of our sport, right? We're in the bottom end of the top tier of our sport, even if we're being humble. All right.
Yeah.
So Riser,
we're the slow fast guys.
Riser is a good example of how people at the top feel about classification systems. Oh, all of it. All right. Who pays the bills in the action shooting sports?
Not us.
50 to 70% finish shooters. Middle of the pack guys like classifications because for them, winning big matches isn't their motivation, and it's also like borderline unattainable for them. So they need something else to chase. And so it's kind of, and one of the reasons I really like classification goals is because it's like, that's my competition against myself. Someone's like, well, you can do that anyway. Yeah, I can. But here's a system in which I can kind of participate and benchmark progress. So what keeps the lights on at USPSA is people wanting to participate in their classification system. Does it need to evolve and continue to evolve? Yes, it does. And they're doing that currently. But a good example of kind of like how some of these things fail is like the people who get super involved in these and super nerdy, they're really worried about the people that Riser's talking about. They're worried about people either not being at that tier and proclaiming to be, or they're worried about people who are hiding, kind of essentially cheating the system and winning, sandbagging and winning at a lower level. And that's out there. That's really out there. I actually know a few people who do that. But I think to catch those people and force them up, you somewhat disenchant the main body of the group. If it's so hard to progress in a classification system, that classification system will fail. All right? People do need to be able to interact with it and move up, or it's just not going to be fun. If it's so hard you can't progress, it's not going to be fun. So I don't think everybody should be a grandmaster, but at the same time, it should be something that normies can do. Like people who really try should be able to get there. It shouldn't be just people who have won a national championship. You should be able, it should be somewhat that tier of people. So I think I do like that it's based off of match finishes. I think one of the better classification systems was the United Multi-Gun League,
Yep.
And so I was
very similar deal, not using the ELO system, but
that was
a similar deal.
That was
based off
straight up
match
finishes. Did you coin pro in UML?
I did.
Okay, I did too.
I can say with a straight face that I am a pro shooter because I have a coin that says it.
Yeah, I coined pro in UML. UML, it was your match finish. There were no classifiers. You just had to shoot matches, and how you finished at the match was how you moved up.
Well, and also it was more granular than that too, because there were local, regional, and national level matches. So even if you were just curb stomping all of your local guys, you can be a local pro, but that doesn't mean anything when you get to a national match. So to like have, whatever the biggest coin was, you had to get a pro coin at a national level match.
Yep.
And then you were considered, a quote unquote pro shooter.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that the match finish thing is part of it. I do like that there are also stages, so people who maybe will never get to shoot a national level championship, they can measure themselves against the system and kind of see, well, if I could go. There was a chapter of my life where this was me. All right, I was like, well, if I could go, like, where do I stack up against those people? And so if your world is smaller than the national level scene, I think it gives something for those people to chase. I do like when they changed, I'm not a super fan of kind of how they changed the USPSA system, so that it's kind of a rolling average all over. I do like, however, that once you peg a certain level, you can't go down. Because to me, once you have those hard skills, that puts you in a certain weight class, similar to engine displacement. Like, once you're an 800cc engine, you have that in you. Even if you're not using it the whole time, I don't think it's fair for you to compete against 600cc engines.
So in the PCSL system, you can go down.
Right. I don't like that.
So you're not a fan of that.
I'm not a fan of that. Because I think that honestly, I think that's kind of sandbagging, because you could just suck for a while. You could do the same thing, go down, and then,
well, I'm pretty sure based off of that I would have dropped, like, let's say I was classified, M in PCSL. I don't actually even know I think it's the same structure, but whatever it is, let's say, just for the sake of this argument, I was classified as M in PCSL. Then I took a year and a half off. Went on the trip with my wife, went climbing, we didn't shoot anything. I'm pretty sure based off of that, I would have been A class in PCSL when I got back.
Yeah.
Because I have like zero, scores for like a whole season and a half.
So now Riser shows up to nationals as an A class shooter, whoops all the A-class shooters' asses because he didn't go down in classification. He just didn't participate for a while.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a super fan of that. I also like, in USPSA, I like how you can't be more than one class lower than your highest class in any other division. Again, like I look at it as horsepower. You have those hard skills. Just because you've never shot a production gun doesn't mean you're a new shooter, right? Like it doesn't mean you're automatically a GM with that gun, but you aren't A class with that gun at a national level match. You're not A class just because you haven't participated there before. So I do like that part of it, but I do think they are focusing more around contemporary performance in more organic environment. I do like that. I still also like the classification stages because they do highlight some hard skills. And like now in a lot of three-gun matches, you are not going to place very high if you can't sprint and shoot on the run like John and Varick. But there are skills that John and Varick aren't very good at, So if you make the entire classification about how you can shoot long courses, but there are short courses, or there are skills that are highlighted by short courses, I think as an aggregate of your overall skill, we need to weigh all of those skills together and not just what is your classification if based on how you perform on long courses at a national match. So I think there's more things to measure than just organic long course performance. But I do like, and I do think it should be more based off of match performance and engagement in the matches. So I think you should be engaged at the section, area, state, regional, national level. More so than just shooting them in your backyard and working your way up, Have I shot classifier matches? Absolutely I have. But that's how the system was set up at the time. I do like systems that encourage people to engage in the sport and participate in the sport at their club and beyond levels. And I think classification systems that are based on match performance encourage more participation in more matches at higher levels.
Yeah. And my understanding, like I said, I have a very rough understanding of this. It is quite possible that everything I have said about this classification system is wrong. So if you have real questions about it, go to the PCSL page and check it out and read that and understand it for yourself. But part of my understanding about this is that the different level of matches and the classifiers are weighed differently.
Yep.
So let's just say, like, this isn't actually correct, but let's just say a classifier stage is weighed as a value of 1. A local match is weighed as a value of 2. A regional match is weighed as a value of 3, and a national match is weighed as a value of 4. So you can shoot a ton of classifiers at a super high level, but it's not going to make you a GM because you have to shoot GM scores against GM shooters at a national level match. Like that, my understanding is you actually cannot make certain classifications. I think it's only GM, maybe it's M and GM, but you cannot make those through the classifier stages alone. You have to prove yourself at a regional or national level match.
But to be a successful classification system, it has to accurately measure the field, which I think is what Max and those guys are working on. The challenge is that I think some of them overlook, both Max and the USPSA committee. It has to be understandable to the general population. Like the average guy kind of needs to understand how it works in like a few sentences and be interested in it. So like USPSA, they're redoing theirs right now, and they're like, well, they froze classifications in limited 10s. Like, we changed limited 10, so we need to freeze classifications there for a while until we have data. Guess what, moron? No one's going to want to shoot lim 10 until they can classify in it. Okay. And so people are going to look at, well, we made a change to limb 10 and nobody participated in it. Yeah, because you made it not fun to shoot until you unlock the classifications. So there's two pieces to it. It has to accurately measure the field. It has to be intriguing and understandable for Gen Pop shooter to want to play with. If it does both those things, it's a good classification system. And if it doesn't, it needs work.
Yeah. And I think they both need work. I think, I haven't seen the ELO system actually like taking place in the real world. I almost like that the math is so complicated that it's sort of like, hey man, don't worry about it. Just go shoot and we'll tell you how good you are. I almost kind of like that part because I think people spend too much time worrying about, like, oh man, I just need to lay down a 82.6 on this thing. And then I'm going to be, A class in this, at this next match. And people like really, people shoot classifiers way different than they shoot stages.
Yep.
And I think the way that they've changed it in USPSA recently, where essentially all of your classifiers count. So you can't just like, if you bomb a classifier, like, oh, well, it's below this certain percentage, so it's not going to count anyways. Like, no, not that. You just put a 20% classifier onto your running tally. You're going to have to like fight that thing off. So that's the part as a person who doesn't participate in that sport much. I actually went through my YouTube channel. I have like all my local matches and all my major matches in there. I have at this point in the year shot twice as many majors as I've shot local.
Yeah.
So and that's the thing. So it's like if I bomb one stage, it's going to take me like 2 years to like get that classifier off of my score.
Oh yeah. And like I've watched that part of the classification system needed to go. Like I messed up the reload, so I'm going to shoot 6 no shoots, so this doesn't count. That needed to go, and that's going to come at the cost of, you know what? All the blemishes are going to sting a little bit more. But the compromise on the USPSA side was they were going to bring the high hit factors down too. So we'll see how that normalizes out. But yeah, you shouldn't.
I think it's going to be better.
I think it's going to.
I think it is an improvement.
I do too. I think both of them are an improvement, and I think actually, I mean, our economy is based on competition. I think both the systems will make both of the systems better.
Yep. And so they did roll out. I can't remember who, but one of the shooting style Instagram channels did roll out basically what everybody's classification would have been at PCSL 2-Gun Nationals in 2024 out in Vegas. And so they're just like, hey, like based off of this system, if we ran the ELO system, this is where everybody would have landed. I think there ended up being like 5 GMs total. Like it was like the top 3 in competition and the top 2 in practical or something like that was like the field. And so it's like if you were below Varick, who got 3rd at that match, like you were M class or lower. And I don't know, it seemed it seemed about right. Like I was like a middle M or whatever, didn't shoot a particularly good match, but like I've talked about before, like, or like Maxwell just kind of said, like we're sort of like the slowest fast guys. Like if you take that top tier, we're in that top tier, but we're not the top of the top tier. So that kind of like stacks up. Like, hey, there's 3 dudes there that everybody was like, yeah, one of those 3 guys are gonna win. And they all got a GM classification, from this YouTube channel. It's not actually their classification, or from this Instagram channel. And then, the down to 12th or something like that ended up being M. And then below that was some A's and so on down the line. And it's like that, that kind of worked out. That's sort of like more or less the tier structure that I think. But at the same time, it's like, if you think about this as belt structure, ask any jiu-jitsu black belt about the levels as black belts. Like there's black belts that just absolutely massacre everybody regardless of belt. Like what, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm a black belt now. And there's still like 12 dudes at my gym that I'll never tap.
Yeah.
Like it will never happen. I mean, no matter how long I keep doing this game.
It's like that in
it's like
GMs
there's
too.
levels to everything.
Yeah. You mean there's
GMs
Nils.
is the same way. It's like
there's Nils and then there's me. I'm not beating Nils anytime soon. We're both GMs.
Exactly correct.
But we're
exactly
also
correct.
both
so like
in the 95th percentile of our sport. So
exactly correct. So that's the thing. It's like Does GM mean podium finish at a major match? No. So, it is the system as it sits too tight? Maybe. Who knows? Like, no idea. But
that's what we
anyways,
think about it.
That's what we think about it. All right. I hope that was enough rambling for everybody. Yeah. This is a fun one. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know the deal. Keep your overlays handy. And if you do ask for an overlay, be nice about it. Just be like, hey, can you throw an overlay on that and check?
If you want it to go your way.
Yeah. The meaner you are, the less likely you are to get it. This has been On the Perf, and we'll see you guys next time.